Started.
Hello.
She was nice
look
cream
great
Sunday today. Whatever.
Yes, this is my sweaters. I told you I would bust them out after Thanksgiving.
Yes.
It is after Thanksgiving. And now my sweaters are busting out. And, sometimes you put things in your bra, sometimes you put them in your sock. In your sock
You could
drawer.
fit a little dog in there,
I
actually.
could put a little birdie in there. I could put a hamster.
A hamster.
People do that.
Put hamsters in their bras.
You live in New York City, you see everything on the street.
Wow.
Well, I bet this was nothing people thought they were going to see, that the deal is now off the table for Paul Manafort. Robert Mueller says that Manafort repeatedly lied to prosecutors. Que surprise. So he's pulling the plea agreement. This morning, you know who attacked Mueller on Twitter, saying that he and his gang of angry Dems are ruining people's lives, refuse to lie, and calls him a conflicted prosecutor gone rogue. Well, that's what
It
he
doesn't make any
said.
sense.
He said he was a conflicted prosecutor gone rogue. So, what's going on here? What's happening?
Well, let's hear from the lawyer.
Sunny.
Yeah.
I know we were talking about this morning. For me, when someone enters into a plea agreement with the federal government, the first thing you tell them is, if you lie to me, that is a separate chargeable offense. That's perjury.
Right.
Up to 5 years in federal prison. And so Paul Manafort knew that if he lied to prosecutors, that he would be charged with perjury and that the plea agreement would be yanked. So I think one of three things is happening here. Either he thought he was going to outsmart prosecutors, which stupid criminals often think they will, or two, he knows something so important that could really harm either the president or someone else in the administration, that he's willing to go to prison for it because he can't talk about it, or he's expecting a presidential pardon, and so he's keeping that secret and willing to go to
I think he's scared of Putin.
Well, that's that he
that's
knows
the-
something so
yeah.
important that he's willing to go to prison for it, because it's either prison or death.
Well,
to-
I mean,
to
his
that-
family's at risk also.
But to
right.
that angle, when you're talking about Putin, I don't know I'm not a lawyer, I don't know anything about this, but what we do know was one of the things that got him in jail was that he was an unregistered foreign agent,
Yes.
and he was a conduit between Russian oligarchs within Putin's inner circle.
Right.
So whatever
And
we
the
don't
Ukraine.
know, and the Ukraine, yes. And this is what we do know about him. As far as I'm concerned, people that do blood money dealings like this, he should rot in jail and then he should rot in hell. As far as I'm concerned with Paul Manafort.
She means that in a nice way, though.
No, I don't. I think when you take blood money from foreign adversaries,
Right.
when you're a United States citizen in the way that he
Well, it's
did,
treasonous,
he should.
right?
The idea that he could be pardoned. I mean, you already saw my reaction in our meeting earlier this morning,
Yeah.
but it is. I don't even. It would enter us to a new level of insanity in this country, which I didn't think I could.
Is it just a coincidence that Trump finally answered all those questions from Mueller, and then like a few days later we hear this information?
Well, I don't know, because he can't talk directly to Manafort, so there could be some
Yeah, but what about
backdoor
Whitaker? Isn't Whitaker
conversation.
like the little mole, the little snitch now?
I
that he
also wonder
appointed?
what this means for the Mueller investigation, because everyone's waiting for these results. Is
They're saying
this news about
probably
Manafort, is that going to
after
set it back? Is he going to now have to interview other people? It also highlights to me a struggle that I've had for a while with presidential pardons. I'm not an expert on pardons, but I struggle with the idea that any president has so much power that they could free someone from getting away with criminal activity.
It's really
and it really
broad.
started back in England with the Kings. And I'm with George Mason, who was one of our founding fathers, who pushed back on this. And Alexander Hamilton was one that put it in place. And now we're to a place where I think the power has grown exponentially to a
really,
place where
really
it's like, what are
broad.
we
They don't
doing
use
here?
it very much. I mean, they
it
don't
was
really
meant
use
to be
it.
symbolic, my understanding.
Yeah.
Like Clinton did it with Preston King, who was a civil rights activism. It recently happened with Jack Johnson, the boxer, famous boxer. So when
Clinton
it's
did
used
it.
in
He pardoned Mark Rich, if you remember.
Rich.
yes, and
Yeah.
it can
Yeah.
be used for situations like that that are nebulous. But I think that if it's symbolic, if you're arrested
Scooter
for
Libby
being a
was part-
civil
yeah.
rights activist,
Yeah.
then that's a different situation than
Yeah.
somebody who was a conduit for Russian oligarchs with Putin.
Yeah, but it's just such a broad power, and my question really is, what is happening with the Mueller investigation? People are saying probably in maybe January, after the holidays, we're going to hear what's going on. But Donald Trump in his recent tweets appear to be frightened to me.
Yeah.
You know, he's talking about this person going rogue. He tweeted something else out. I don't have it in front of me, but it was like, you know, this is just ridiculous and this is crazy. And I reading it thought, wow, he's really
Well, he's
scared.
at a 60% disapproval rating now, which is very high.
Yeah.
I don't know who these 40% are who still like
For
it.
the president. I've seen so many different polls that are all over the place, because I saw one where he was actually doing much better than that.
No,
so
no,
it just depends on where you look.
One. This is new.
Son, you want to...
Oh, we have a legal notice.
Yeah, you
Sorry.
do. That's
Defense lawyers deny that Manafort violated the deal and say Manafort met repeatedly with the special counsel's office and believes he has provided truthful information.
Lock him up.
Well, the one thing, you know,
Lock him up.
but it came out that his daughter actually came out saying there was, I don't believe, I remember it was a text message or Facebook message saying that her father had accepted blood money, and my compassion goes out to her because obviously she
Whose
didn't do
father?
anything wrong.
I'm sorry,
Paul Manafort's daughter. So I think even if this aside, he was a bad dude to begin with.
Yeah.
He never should have been on a presidential campaign. There was a reason why, to my knowledge, he hadn't worked on presidential campaigns, at least in the recent past.
Why was he on that one?
That's what I mean. And
On that campaign,
he had the
Trump
kind of
campaign.
reputation
The
that he never
others are
should
in
have been
jail
this close
too.
to
I mean, a
begin
lot
with.
of them are in jail. Who works
Politics,
for
Megan
Trump.
knows this too. I mean, when you
Something
run for
new.
president, or your family does, you often get a lot of political rats that come in there, people that you don't know well. So I actually don't think Trump knew him as like a really good friend. What I find, though, the most disturbing is that Manafort has been still so loyal to Trump, where you look at Michael Cohen, his lawyer, and other people that have been in
wouldn't
circle.
call
I
it
don't know that we
loyalty.
understand the relationship
It took
between
Manafort a
and
while
Trump.
to talk to the feds, though. Remember, he was trying to get out of this. That's why I
He
feel
did
like
have
there's
a
something going on here.
reputation for being, like, in politics, Manafort had a reputation for being, I mean, he broke up his consulting firm.
Yeah.
Because he was doing deals like this and, you know,
We
having
don't know the depth of
nebulous
that relationship
interaction.
between Trump and
The
Manafort.
No,
thing
and
that
I will never try
you
to
will
understand that.
always find is that the story continues to grow.
Yeah.
And so, as it grows, so will we. We will continue to bring you the insanity that we do call American politics, and we will be right back with many more hot topics.
Still ahead, no kid gloves. Why Reese Witherspoon says she's brutally honest with her children. Can the co-hosts tell their kids they stink at something? Still ahead, Sandra Bland's jailhouse death started a nationwide movement demanding answers. And we've got an exclusive look at a new documentary that's shedding a disturbing new light on what happened.
Welcome back. Boy, that was light applause.
I feel like we're in England.
They were instructed to do that
I
for
know.
some reason. Yeah.
Light applause. It's like,
Oh, yes, it was so pleased to be here. Thank you.
so,
Welcome back.
yes, we give you that 4 seconds of humor before we get into this conversation about the U.S. Senate race in Mississippi, which has gained national attention over accusations of racism against Republican candidate Cindy Hyde-Smith. First, she told her supporters she'd be in the front row at a public hanging if they invited her. And apparently in 2014, social media posts had surfaced of her at a Confederate President Jefferson Davis's home, holding Confederate soldiers' weapons and calling it Mississippi history at its best. And here's what you know who said before stumping for her last night. Take a look.
I know her, and I know she apologized and she misspoke, but I will tell you this. I've known her for a period of time now as a senator. She's been an excellent senator. She's done a great job. She's somebody that's respected in the Senate, and I'm going there. I'm going to make, I guess, 2 rallies on top of everything else.
Spare me.
Now, they say she's ahead by 10 points in the polls leading up to today's runoff. So what's the message being sent?
Well, she's a Trump candidate. She's really a Trump clone, because he won Mississippi by 17 points, and she went around the state in a bus that was called the MAGA wagon, which had a photo of her and a photo of Trump on it. But I think what this race has done is it's brought back to the surface so many deep and real and raw emotions that still exist when it comes to race, and still the problems that that this country faces. In particular, and I haven't lived in Mississippi, and I'm not an expert in Mississippi history, but clearly that still exists in that state.
Mississippi was ranked the #1 least healthy state.
It's also
by the United Health Foundation, and this Hyde-Smith woman is trying to repeal Obamacare, and yet people are going to vote for her against their own interests.
Well, can I say one thing? The Democrat running against her is not great. He received $750,000 for lobbying for Ivory Coast dictator Laurent Gbagbo's government in 2011.
And then what did he
huge
do?
Human rights violator.
What did he do after that? After it was pointed out?
It says that I don't know. I think taking $750,000 from a dictator is bad.
He found that out, and this was reported, so I don't know. But I'm told he returned that money and made the CIA aware of the fact that this had happened.
If I were a voter, it would bother, both things bother me.
Yeah,
What she did bothers me, what he does bothers me.
Understandably.
What's interesting of the politics of this is that this should be a slam dunk for Republicans, because it's a state that Trump won by 18 points, and much like my home state of Arizona, there are even demographic shifts happening in Mississippi as well. And as you said, 46th in education, 50th in healthcare, 49th in infrastructure, 48th in the economy. This is a state that needs a lot of help from a lot of people,
Yes,
and
it
neither
does.
of these candidates, in my opinion, come up to the level that it
Well, they
should.
certainly don't need her there.
Well, that's the problem that I have with it, because Mississippi is the last state that still has the Confederate flag on its flag. It's the last. It passed a law, in 2017, I believe, that said you can't move any of the monuments because it's an ode to our history. So I feel that this candidate, Hyde-Smith, and especially Trump stumping for her, either they're ignorant of the history and the hurt of Mississippi's lynchings,
Maybe they don't care.
or they don't care, and the Republicans lost African Americans by an 81-point percentage during the midterm elections. And so you would think that they would be more cognizant of the real pain that people of color have when you see a candidate talking about public lynchings, hangings, when you see a candidate that went to a segregated school and intentionally and sent her daughter to a segregated school, when you see a candidate who, talks about the Confederacy as the best part of American history, and you have all of these corporations that are now pulling their donations from her, like Google, like Union Pacific, Boston Scientific, the MLB. Why were they donating to begin with? So
she has a history of this.
Yeah,
It's not
this is
recent.
not new.
But my question is, why is this candidate even viable?
Sonny, it's a good
today?
question.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
One of the things that you should be aware of
2001, when they voted to keep the flag.
is in Mississippi, black folks make up 36% of the registered voters. But according to the Election Law Journal, Mississippi is the worst state in the country for ballot accessibility.
So my husband's
She's
family is all
for
from...
voter suppression also, according to what I've been reading. She supported voter suppression. She was filmed saying it was a great idea to make it just a little more difficult for liberals to vote.
Yeah, she's real bad. We're all in agreement on that.
No, but Sonny, what I was going to say is my husband's family is from Mississippi, and his grandma, that's where she grew up, and probably the worst time in history for that state, one of the worst times. And she's no longer with us. She died this past year, but I had so many conversations with her, and I was reminded of the disconnect generationally of the things, the way she would talk and the things that she would talk about, not realizing the way that things come across, and the way that I think about the world. And I think in time, things will change. I'm saying that I think it's going to be up to, I don't need to get into the specifics
No, but she would say racist stuff?
No, I think they lived in a different time. And you know what? No,
the glory days of the
yes,
Confederacy?
and I think it's going to take a next generation coming up that's going to push for
The only thing that I will say
change.
is it's exhausting to be a Republican and have a woman like this on TV and being a topic. She's a bad candidate. I interpret any acceptance of any of this as veiled. I'm not allowed to apparently say completely racist, but in my opinion, it's
racist ideology.
deeply insensitive towards
It's
our
real
history.
close.
I don't know.
It's real
Yes,
close to
it's 21.
racism.
And I would prefer, thank you. Yes. But I would there's so many provocative, interesting Republicans coming up, and I'm stuck with this.
Yes.
And that's what's
But when
exhausting.
she says she would enjoy watching...
And she's probably going to win, by the way.
When she says she'd enjoy watching a hanging,
Yes, it's insane.
Is that a compliment?
No,
what is that?
I've been talked to by producers. It's disgusting. All of it is disgusting. It's embarrassing. That's all I have to say about this
But
anymore.
not only is she a viable candidate, she will likely win. And Trump is
Well, you know
supporting
what?
her.
We don't know what's going to happen.
That's right.
We never know. and Roy Moore is the biggest.
Oh, yeah, Alabama.
That's the big. You know, everybody said Roy Moore is taking this. He did not take it. So she still has to earn these.
Well, people,
And
you know
people
what?
still
you know
have
what?
to do
Last
the.
final thing. People in Mississippi feel bad for them the most because they deserve better.
Not if they're voting for her, then.
They still have to. You still have to count the ballots.
Yeah.
She still has to earn that. It's not handed to anybody. There's no sure thing in politics. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
I feel I'm having applause disorder. I don't know what I'm hearing, and I can barely hear anything because my head is stuffed up.
Yeah.
I feel like it's this big.
Yeah.
I know. Well, I know.
Tristan.
Yeah. Dristan? When's the last time
my
anyone
God.
said
They
Dristan?
make it anymore.
I don't even know if
What
they
is
make
that?
it.
Dristan,
Dristan.
for sinuses.
When we were little, that was what you took when you have sinus issues.
Yeah.
You take Dristan.
Dristan, yeah.
It's just nostrils
make it
and
anymore.
there's the whole thing. So, speaking of nostrils, a lot of parents will praise their children no matter what. But Reese Witherspoon says she agrees with Chris Rock's famous bit about being brutally honest with your kids. She admits she broke it to her child, Ava, when she was in the 3rd grade, that maybe she wasn't great at basketball. But the question is, do you need to be honest with little kids?
Can't you wait till
Do they
5th?
care?
Why not wait till 5th grade to ruin their little dreams? I mean, really, I don't think it's. I would never do it. You don't tell kids anything like that.
My
Not
parents-
until they're,
You know,
not until they're
I thought that when I was a kid, I couldn't sing. Okay, I find out it's the wrong key I've been singing in. Now I
Is that
sing-
what the problem
well,
has
yes.
been?
I mean, I was
Damn
in
it.
I was in these groups, and I was singing as if I was a soprano. I am
Right.
an alto, and I sing in James Taylor's key. Now they told me I couldn't sing, but I can sing in James Taylor's
Yeah, that'll
key.
screw you up. If
Maybe
you
that's
don't
my
be.
problem. I'm singing in the
No,
wrong key.
that's not the problem.
That's my problem. That's what it
You
is.
are not a great singer. You're a wonderful lawyer. You're a great bee grower thing. A wonderful chicken lady. But you're not a singer.
I
Me
know.
either.
It's
And
the
I get paid to do
superpower.
it.
I know.
And it's bad.
It's the
Yeah.
superpower I've always wanted, but it's interesting because look, nowadays you don't have to sing that well, and you can be, pretty famous for the
Exactly.
singing.
Don't name names.
So I won't name names. So
We know who they
my
are.
daughter loves to sing, and she'd be in the car, and I was like. And I don't tell my kids that
and then
they're
what
not good at
happened?
anything.
And then what
She's
happened?
in the choir now, being given solos
Thank
and
you.
stuff.
You see?
So she got better. Maybe she should teach me
Well,
about the key.
Luca, my grandson, they teach him violin in his school. So I said, yeah, he has violin like the what is that Japanese system they do?
Oh, yes.
And
Suzuki.
Suzuki. So I said to him, you can play the violin? Well, he says PJ plays it better. So the kid knows already. You don't have to tell them.
Yeah.
They know.
Yeah.
They'll figure
When
it
you're
out.
little, don't you know? Like, I was not picked in dodgeball. I was like always one of the last kids picked because I suck at dodgeball.
Were you the kid that they threw the ball out all the time?
only
Tried
sport
to
I
hit,
have.
or were you the one who threw the ball?
I just was bad. No one wanted to play with me on the team sports. But the only sport I've ever been good at is riflery and rifles. That's it. That's the only thing I can do well.
Target.
Target shooting,
Hopefully.
skeet shooting, anything with a gun.
Yeah.
My husband is better at skeet shooting than I am, which he would like me to say. But you know when you suck. I sucked at every sport growing up. I was terrible. So
Yeah, my parents, they put us in everything so we would fail though. Like my sisters now,
They put you in
no,
so you would
instead
fail?
of telling us we were bad, I think they wanted us to
try it out.
Yeah, so my sister is a concert pianist and she travels the world playing. I couldn't even play chopsticks.
Yeah.
So you figured out, I told you
do
the story, I
figure it
ran for
out.
office and I was my only vote. And it scars you for life. My parents aren't going to say, don't run for office because you're not going to be good.
Yeah.
They'll say, go after it. And then when you fail, you're
That's
like,
what I do. I
Yeah,
tell
you're
them,
bad.
try
Fail.
everything. You're
Yeah.
great.
That's right. I go with that.
Great.
Whoopi, did you always know you'd be an incredible actress?
Yes.
Yes.
But people outside of me said it was a crazy dream.
No.
But in my mind, I always saw myself coming downstairs with all the great actors that I watched on television on $1 Million Movie.
Yeah.
So in my mind, of course, yes, I always sure.
Yeah.
But you know, other people sometimes are not so sure about your dream.
Did your mom push you to do it?
She didn't push me,
She
but
encouraged you.
but my mother said, listen, you're either are or you're not. And the only way you're going to find out is to do it.
Yeah.
So this is the thing that I believe. Let them try.
Yeah.
You know, they don't, you know, there's nothing wrong with trying. It might work out for them.
You know,
Yeah.
when I was growing up, nobody ever said to me, you can't do it. They never said you can't do it. So they gave me encouragement. They gave me an audience. They gave me applause. But they never got me an agent.
Yeah, but
and
this
to
one's
this day,
got an Oscar, so I'm sorry. It worked out for
I needed
her.
an agent. That's all I needed. And
Yeah,
I
but
was-
there's a difference between that and having an EGOT winner sitting with us. I'm sorry.
Well, you know that. Let me tell you the funny thing about that. Funny thing about the EGOT is I had never heard of it until I did the show. What's the show that Alec Baldwin was doing? 30 Rock.
Yeah.
Until I did that, no one had ever heard this phrase EGOT.
They're so few.
I do. No. I believe it was something that was made up for the show. I'll tell you more about it. We'll be back. Yeah. No. I don't. So, in case you actually wanted to know about the EGOT thing,
Yes.
1984, Philip Michael Thomas brought it up as a way to describe all of the awards. Then in 2009, there was a episode on 30 Rock with Tracy Morgan, who was pursuing me. Because I apparently had an EGOT
Do they know what
and
it
didn't
is?
know
The audience may
well,
not know.
yes, it is an Oscar, a Tony,
An Emmy,
and a Grammy.
And you have to have won all
of
four
them.
Yes.
in order
You did.
to.
Yes.
And I thought there were only about 12 people in the world
There's a
that
couple-
have it,
there's-
right?
there's
Maybe more
several
now.
more. Yeah, there's several
15,
more.
but
Well,
not more than 20.
John Legend
John
just
Legend
became
just-
one.
Right, that's
you know,
right.
Rita Moreno?
Rita, I think Barbara Streisand. There's several. There are a lot of folks.
15. There's 15.
Yeah, well, there's not a lot
That's
of
a
folks.
small exclusive group.
It's not a lot.
Group. No, it's not a whole lot, but you know, there you are. Anyway, do you know men and women have different ideas about what counts as? And then I say I didn't want to do this one. All right, I guess we're doing it.
Let's not do it.
No, because we talk about cheating all the time. It's one we talk about all the time. But NASA just made it.
Yeah.
Well, we like cheating too.
Yes, well, we cheat all the
If you
time.
cheat NASA, does it count as cheating or up in space?
I don't know. If you're up in space, is it cheating?
It is always cheating.
Okay.
Nothing makes
Manny.
What you do?
And we're back.
So don't do it.
I'm sorry.
So-
Nothing makes me happier than when you yell at the prompter about dumb topics. It makes me so happy on so many
Well, you know what it is?
I didn't want to talk about it either.
We talk about cheating a lot, and so I just thought one of the things that interested me that you all were talking about was the fact that you weren't surprised that there were so many remotes in people's houses, and apparently millennials are very freaked out that their parents have more than one remote, because I guess the millennials have one remote that does everything. It opens the door, it goes to the bathroom for you, it does all kinds of stuff.
It's their phone.
It starts, but they don't understand why you have a lot of different remotes for your different televisions.
Who cares?
Apparently millennials do.
I love this
I don't like
so
all
much.
the different remotes. I like one remote. Manny has booby-trapped our entire house. We have so many different remotes, and then wants to explain to me how the remotes work. I mean, it's like, I don't want to know how the clock works. I just want to know what time it is. Just turn the TV on.
You
That's
almost
it.
swore. You almost swore. I heard that.
TV on.
Because nobody gives a, about any of this. We'll be back.
An activist
It's clear the black life didn't matter.
found dead in jail. A coast-to-coast call for action. 3 years after Sandra Bland's death, does a new documentary reveal details that could change everything? Her family shares their mission for justice only on The View. Next.
Activist Sandra Bland getting arrested after a routine traffic stop escalated back on July 10th, 2015. 3 days later, she was found dead in her jail cell. 3 years later, The mysteries that still surround her death are examined in the new HBO documentary, Say Her Name, The Life and Death of Sandra Bland. Her two sisters, Shante Needham and Sharon Cooper, join us now. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So, Sharon, your sister Sandra's death 3 years ago sparked public outrage, mass protests in the country. Can you just remind everyone exactly what happened to her?
Exactly. Thank you all for having us here. We really appreciate it. Sandra was actually on her way to the grocery store. She had just relocated to Texas to take a job opportunity with her alma mater, which is Prairie View A&M. And just in the course of, quite frankly, living while black in America, which we all know far too well, she was pulled over by a police officer for failure to use her turn signal to change lanes. And unfortunately, she was brutalized in the field and was taken to jail, where she was found dead 3 days later.
Shante, you were actually one of the last one to speak to Sandy in jail.
Yes.
We have a clip of that, actually. Let's play it.
Sandy called me on July 11th to let me know that she had been arrested. I said, what are you in jail for? She said, I really don't know. And she said, my arm is hurting really bad. And I could hear her talking to the guards in the background. Then she said, I'll call you back. And she hung up the phone. And she never called back. I wouldn't wish this hurt on anyone.
The emotions are still so raw. And you watch this and still so many unanswered questions. I want to point out that your family never even got a call that she passed away. It was a cousin that called and told you. What do you think happened? Do you think she took her own life?
To be honest with you, we'll never know. Everything surrounding it was questionable. So we'll never know. And that's what hurts the most.
And this documentary is so powerful. I watched it last night. It's so incredible. But one thing that struck me was that Sandy was an activist. She almost narrated the documentary through her blogs about racism and race relations and working on she wanted to work on the divide between the races. She talked a lot about police brutality. What was shocking to me was how could someone really so equipped to live black in Texas, so woke, could end up being a hashtag? Like, how could that happen?
I think why it happened and what we continue to see is there's almost this outrage fatigue, if you will. If you are living while black in America, you know what it feels like to have your life in jeopardy at any given point. And so to that end, we know what's going on. It is the lack of response, I feel, from those who aren't impacted by it, why it's still able to happen. There are people who are of the majority who have a seat at the table, and so they need to activate their voice in a way that causes and ignite and spark for change, because we know what's happening. And when we've been on the front lines and we've been saying not only just that Black Lives Matter, but also too, we're fighting to be seen as human. And that is what this documentary shows, and why it is so almost palatable, if you will, that Sandy was able to show up and narrate a documentary about her life.
Yeah.
Such a lot of the frustration has to do with the way officers and local officials handle the situation. And what other questions have gone unanswered in this case? I mean,
we don't have our time of death. I think that was we don't have our time of death. I think that was very important. They never gave us that.
Is the officer still, where's the officer?
Yeah.
He's no longer working for Texas. We don't know what he's doing right now, but he was fired 6 months after she passed.
And there was no camera.
So he was on the payroll for 6 months.
For 6 months.
And there was a perjury charge against him.
Correct.
Right? As I recall. What happened to that?
And what happened with the perjury charge is that it was dropped. And what you will see in a lot of these cases, folks don't understand why people in the black community don't get excited about an indictment, because an indictment doesn't necessarily equate to a conviction.
Right.
And so in this instance, when the indictment came down, it was a perjury charge, which was the minimal amount. I believe he could have served a year in jail. That charge was dropped with the promise that he wouldn't practice law enforcement in the state of Texas, when quite frankly he shouldn't be a law enforcement official anywhere.
So only law enforcement in Texas?
Correct. That is correct.
And my understanding is, Sharon, your family reached a $1.9 million settlement in your wrongful death lawsuit with the promise of jail reform and police de-escalation training. Because it's very clear from this case that I covered when I was at CNN that he did not de-escalate the situation, he almost escalated the situation, in my opinion. What was that promise fulfilled? The training promise?
I think it was fulfilled to a certain degree. We were in a position where we were able to get an act passed that, in addition to some of the issues that we had with the jail, it was that there was monitoring that they said was done that wasn't done, and there was falsification of jail logs. So some of those things were addressed in the Sandra Bland Act. Unfortunately, the police de-escalation, which is the crucial point of legislation, was left on the cutting room floor. And so while it's disheartening, it's not a reason for us not to continue to fight, which is what we do, because ultimately that is what we need in this country. Is we need our law enforcement officials to be trained appropriately so that they can handle all situations that they encounter.
Especially in de-escalation.
Absolutely.
Especially when you know that there are kids with special needs who are out there, young black men who, you know, who are not responding to anything but someone yelling at them, and maybe, you know, so there's a lot that needs to happen between law enforcement and the citizens.
Yes.
Do you feel people are listening?
Absolutely.
Good.
I think people are listening. I just hope they listen and activate what's already in them. Contact your elected officials, hold them accountable, and don't just sit at home and say, oh, that's sad. No, do something. Call, write, go sit in the office, do something.
Sharon, 3 years later, how's the family doing? Is there any closure? And if not, what needs to happen for there to be some closure here?
I think for us in particular, I think closure will always be in far reach, largely due to the fact that we don't have the answers that we need. And I think at this point the answers would come from the person who's no longer here to give them to us, unfortunately, which is my sister. What I will say is this: I think what needs to be done, in addition to what Shante already expressed, is that those who have the power, who are in boardrooms, who have a platform, who have a voice, who can actually reach people, those are the folks who not only need to be an ally for change, because we talk a lot about allyship, but need to be an accomplice for change. You have to be willing to stir some things up, quite frankly. You have to be willing to amplify your voice
Do exactly
and speak
what your
louder.
sister did.
Exactly.
And we, of course, over the weekend just had another life taken. And so that's a family who has just entered into this mishigas of sorrow. What can you tell them to help them through this? Because you've been, you know.
I want to talk to that family. There's a couple other families I've seen as well. You can't remember because there's so many, right? What I want to say to that family and to the public is to grant that family and those who have lost their loved ones the same amount of grace and mercy that you would expect when you lose a loved one. There's an immense amount of unsolicited publicity that comes with it. It's a catch-22. And so respect their space. Respect their space. Respect their boundaries, and the best thing that you can do for them is to pray for them and respect their wishes. And when they're ready to come forward and have their story be told, let them tell their story on their own terms and in their own time.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Shante, and thank you, Sharon.
Thank you for having us.
Say Her Name, Life and Death of Sandra Bland debuts December 3rd. Do yourself a favor. This could be any one of our family members. Watch this. We'll be right back.